Parashat Re'eh. Torah tells us, Re'eh anochi noten ifnechem hayom beracha ukelala. First pasuk of this week's parasha says Moshe, speaking on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I am giving to you today, noten ifnechem hayom beracha ukelala, the blessings and the curses. So the focus of the word Anochi always means I. As a pasuk in the beginning of Sefer Devarim tells us, Anochi omed ben Hashem uvenechem. Anochi, the I, the Ani, stands between Hashem and us. A lot of times, what makes Avodat Hashem difficult is, you could call it the ego, where a person has a bit of a narcissist inside himself, where he doesn't see outside his world, like we spoke a little bit about last week. We spoke about Rabbi Leeor Dahan, how he would be very careful to remove every ounce and trace of arrogance and ego from who he was. And he would say, Lo tavi to'eva el betecha. You shouldn't bring something repulsive into your house. And how much of a danger it is, like having a time bomb inside a big wedding hall, that it's considered a makom sakana. It's a place of danger. And we have to realize that so many times our own ego trips us up in ways that take us away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our own desires, our own wants. Yet at the same time, there's also a concept, and this is a dynamic that everybody has to get used to one way or another. There's a concept of Vayigbali bo b'darkei Hashem. A person has to be very humble, but he also has to be very proud and very confident, and in essence, a little bit egotistic. The Torah demands of a person both. And you say to yourself, how is that even possible? So every person must know that there's an on and off switch that he has to be very familiar with. You have to be able to turn on the switch and turn off the switch based on what Hashem wants from you. The switch of ego and the switch of self-respect, and you could call it a lot of different labels, self-esteem, has to be turned on when it comes to being proactive and doing for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The man says, he's sitting there and he's in the shiur, and the Rebbe is giving a very sophisticated, complicated shiur. I'm not going to be able to understand this. Hashem didn't give me the skills to understand it. That's where he needs to have ego, and needs to have confidence, and he needs to say to himself, no. Hashem gave me a brain, I'm going to be able to understand it. It's not just for the tzaddikim and the big wise and the geniuses, it's also for me to understand. And he works hard. When it comes to, am I going to be able to know the whole Torah? Am I going to be able to put in the effort to become one of the great Gdolei Hador, the leaders of the generation? You have to have arrogance. You have to have Vayigbali bo b'darkei Hashem. If a person comes over to, I'll just give as a small example, he says, so and so, I want you to read the Torah. I want you to read. Read me an aliyah. He says, no, ma'ani, ma'chayai, who am I, what am I? No, let someone else do it. That's not good. That's not a good humility. Humility has to be in the right place. So you have to be able to turn on the Anochi and to be able to turn off the Anochi. How do you turn it on? Turn it on, you see Avodat Hashem. By you being humble, you're going to decrease and diminish what you're supposed to be doing. That's the wrong thing to do. But in the other way, if somebody wasn't so nice to you, if you're starting to get angry at a spouse, at a family member, you say to yourself, where is this coming from? This is Anochi. This is a bad Anochi. This is an egotistic Anochi. That you have to shut off. So a person has a valve that he's able to turn on and to turn off. And it's not just with Anochi, it's with other midot as well. Person has to be able to turn on. Sometimes it's good to be lazy. You heard of this? You looked up. Right? It's good to be lazy. Sometimes it's not good to be lazy. If Shacharit is 7:45 in the morning, You say, I'm going to be lazy, I'm going to roll in at 8 o'clock. That's a bad laziness. But if your friend says, let's go watch this movie. Right? Let's go. I'm tired, leave me alone, I don't want to go ahead. Or he wants you to hang out with bad friends. You know these friends are not a good influence. No, I'm very lazy right now, I'm not in the mood, I'll just go take a nap. That's a good laziness. A person has to know how to turn it on and turn it off. And it's not a contradiction. Because Hashem wants you to use both talents. And this is what the Pasuk is actually saying. Re'eh, see, Anochi. The concept and the trait of Anochi is before us, Beracha u'kelala. It can be used in a way that's a bracha, and it can be used in a way that's a kelala. And you have to know how to use the Anochi properly, when it's a good thing to be arrogant, and when it's a bad thing to be arrogant. If it helps your service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then it's important. Vayikbali bo b'darkei Hashem. And if it doesn't, if it takes away, if it gets you more angry, more upset, more looking down at your friend and saying, who's he? What am I versus him? I'm much better than him. That's already that's pasul. And to be able to channel it is the way of Avodat Hashem. The same thing is true with the physical world. A lot of times, we talk a lot about how a person is supposed to minimize physicality. That it's not as important, it's just a vehicle, it's a way to get to a goal, the spirituality is the goal, the physicality is secondary. That's all true. That person has that whole mindset is all true regarding himself. When it comes to Ben Adam L'Havero, it's exactly the opposite. He has to say, what are you talking about? Every level of physicality of my friend is worth diamonds for me, is the most important thing in the world. I'm not going to compromise an iota of his physicality. When it comes to my physicality, I can cut every corner in the book. When it comes to his, whether the his is ani, a poor man, you say, look, what does he need to have nice clothing? He'll get the cheap one. No, buy him nice things. He doesn't have don't give him a meal that's $5, give him the $30 meal. Give him something good. You say, but gashmiut, it's not good for him to have all the physicality. No, that's for you. When it comes to Ben Adam L'Havero, you completely have to turn the equation. So all of these matters, the Torah wants us to have a different perspective. When it comes to one situation, you have to think one way, and in a different situation, you have to think another way, and it's not a contradiction because they're both emit, depending on the situation, the truth itself changes, and the focus must change as well. And that's what the Torah is telling us, that the Anochi could be a bracha and it could also be a klala. And you have to know how to approach it correctly. A lot of times, when we think of the word bracha, you say, Moshe Rabbeinu is telling Am Yisrael that bracha is before you. So what's bracha? The natural, what comes to the mind? Shefa, wealth, honor, luxury. These are concepts. Money is bracha. But notice that that's not what the Torah says at all. The Torah actually defines what the bracha is. It says, Et ha-beracha asher tishme'u el mitzvot Adonai Elohim. You want to know what the bracha is? The bracha is listening to Hashem. Something that leads you to listening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in itself bracha. And what takes you away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the kirara. So many times, as an example, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give us wealth. Let us win the lottery, because that's bracha in our eyes. And says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but I know that if you end up with a lot of money, it's going to take you away from me. So you know what that is? You might think it's bracha, but Hashem says that's klala, because that's not asher tishme'un, and therefore it can't be bracha. And this is what sometimes our vision is skewed. When we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for certain things, we think it's good for us. But Hashem says, you're asking me really, I know that what you're asking for me is klala, is a curse, is not going to be good, because it's going to take you away from Avodat Hashem and not bring you closer. And really, yesterday we were learning Masechet Kiddushin, and there the Gemara says that a person who does one more mitzvah than his averot, he had equal mitzvot and equal averot, and he does one more mitzvah. The Gemara there, the Mishnah there says, Mitivin lo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does good for him in this world. And the Gemara says, really? Does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do good for him if he has more mitzvot, one more mitzvah than all of his averot? Mitivin lo. The Gemara brings the several proofs that the opposite. If he has one extra additional mitzvah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings suffering to him on this world, and he brings pain, and he brings difficulty, and he brings challenges, because he has more mitzvot than averot. So Gemara says, very simple. That is the mitivin law. The mitivin law is having difficulties in this world, so he comes clean to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Olam Haba. So he's perfected, so that he's closer to Hashem in the true world, which is Olam Haba. That is what's good for him. So look how backwards our mentality is. We have no idea what's good for us and what's not good. Who knows? Who understands themselves so well to know what's going to lead them closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and further from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Only Hashem knows. So we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It says by David HaMelech, it says, he prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Eli, Eli, lama azavtani. Hashem, Hashem, why did you leave me? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu replied, Rachok miyeshuati divrei sha'agati. Rachok means far away, is the salvation from what I'm asking. I'm asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's so far away from the true salvation. What I really need and what I'm asking for, the difference between the two of them could be light years apart. It could be so far apart from one another. And sometimes we feel a little bit saddened. We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us one thing. It could be maybe shidduchim. A lot of times people struggle with shidduchim, or they struggle within marriage, and they say, why am I going through so much struggle? Why am I having so much klala, so much problems and curses in my life? And it could be that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would answer so-called their tefillah and give him a person, that person would maybe make their life worse. Or if he was not married to this individual, his life might be even more difficult. And a person doesn't understand what's bracha, what's klala. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'll tell you what's bracha. Bracha is asher tishmeun. What ends up with more avodat Hashem, more carefulness, more closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a bracha. Imagine going to the doctor, and you tell the doctor, I need you to prescribe me a medicine. What medicine do you want prescribed? I need you to prescribe nice fat steak every single day. My wife doesn't let me eat steak. Give me a medicine, say that I have a sickness, that the only thing that I could eat every day is steak. So she leaves me alone. The doctor looks at the man and says, but why did your wife tell you you can't have steak? He says, well, because we did blood check and blood works, and they saw in the blood that there was high cholesterol. So it's not good for me to have fat. That's what she says. So the doctor looks up his records, and he sees, he has very high cholesterol. So he says, what do you want me to prescribe to you? Meat? You want me to make your life even worse for you? You know how dangerous this is for you? You think this is good for you because you want to have meat. But in truth, this is terrible for you. This is going to destroy you. It's going to kill you. If you go ahead and you have this fatty meats every single day, it's going to destroy you. The doctor says, absolutely not. And who's the doctor? We ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for something, we have no idea what we're asking for. Some people, I feel bad. I feel bad. They turn and they say, with all sincerity and honesty, they don't even understand themselves. They say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please give me 8 bedrooms, 9 bedrooms, so that I could do achnasat orchim. So I could go ahead and bring in guests. And I'm thinking to myself, why? This person is so far away from understanding what's good for him, what's not good for him, what he thinks is good for him, what he thinks is avodat Hashem, what's really avodat Hashem, is a completely different, warped world and justification for things that he thinks is good for him. And he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why didn't you give me the house? Why didn't you give me the house? I wanted the house. The answer is, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if it's tishmeun, but what's going to happen when you have the house? He's going to have one room is going to be a home theater. The other room is going to be the playroom. By the time that he's done with the house and he's settled in, he's not going to have a minute for Torah. He's not going to have a minute for Hashem. Too many luxuries, too many enjoyable things that are going on in the house that he's not going to set time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. Sometimes you have people, they say, no, I need to build a lot of bedrooms because Bezat Hashem, my kids are going to get older, they're going to get married. I need every single one of them to stay in the house. And to live in the house, they should at least have a room in the house for Shabbatot, for Chagim, for Yamim Tovim, for Shana Rishona, for whatever. Fill in the blank. And then when it comes time and their children finally get married off, there's so little shalom. There's so much problems and so much difficulty that not even a single kid is able to stay in the house, let alone for 5 minutes, let alone to sleep there, or to stay there for a Shabbat. It's a person has no idea. We ask, and sometimes it's like a little sad, it's a little unfortunate. The things that we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu themselves show how far we are away from understanding what we need and what's good for us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that, and therefore sometimes He says to us, listen, I know this is what you want and you think is good for you, but I'm telling you that's the klala. That's actually not what's good for you. What's really good for you is this. You have to learn to accept what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. As one of the greatest things, I think this is the most amazing part about having a Torah perspective. Perhaps the most amazing part of having the true perspective, the true emet of the Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. It says this week's Parashat, it says, Enei Hashem Elokecha ba. The eyes of Hashem are upon it, upon the land. Mereshit shana ve'ad acharit shana. Mereshit shana means the beginning of the year until the end of the year. Rashi says the end of the year is determined by the beginning of the year. Now, if you look at the pasuk, it spells Mereshit without an aleph. Mem, Resh, Shin, Yud, Taf. And usually, Rosh, you spell it with an aleph. There's an aleph between the resh and the shin. There's an aleph. So why is Mereshit spelled without an aleph? Amazing chidah. The chidah says that we have this statement that's found in the Gemara Masechet Betzah. It's very famous. Kol mezonotav shel adam ktsufim lo mirosh shana ad rosh hashana. Chutz. Everything is determined from one Rosh Hashanah until the next Rosh Hashanah. Meaning, whatever goes on today, tomorrow, for the next month, has already been determined last Rosh Hashanah. Everything that happens, and everything that has happened in the last year was all determined on Rosh Hashanah, except for a few things that are left undetermined. Hotzaot, banav letalmud Torah, the tuition that you pay for your children in order for them to sit and learn, and anything that is associated with Talmud Torah. A guy who supports a Ben Torah, let's say, as an example. He supports a Ben Torah to sit and learn in yeshiva from his own money. He gives him, he says, I'll give you $1,000 a month, you sit and learn. He's supporting Torah that was not taken into consideration. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to provide him that amount that he spent for Torah, what he spent for Shabbatot, as well as, it says Shabbatot, it tells us Talmud Torah, and it also says Rashi Chodashim, and Yamim Tovim. Very good. Yamim Tovim and Rashi Chodashim. So it's very fascinating if you look at the letters of the month Tishrei. Mi Tishrei ad Tishrei, chutz mi Tishrei. From Tishrei, which is the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, is the first day of Tishrei, until Tishrei, except for Tishrei. What does it mean except for Tishrei? Tav stands for Torah. Shin stands for Shabbat. Resh stands for Rosh Chodesh. And Yud stands for Yamim Tovim. Those four things are outside, excluded from the calculation of Tishrei. Now, if you look back at the pasuk, Mereshit Shana is written without an aleph. What are the letters Mereshit? Same letters as Tishrei. Mereshit Shana, from the Tishrei of the Shana, already everything is determined. What's going to happen all the way to the end of the year? How much money you're going to make? How much? Even not money. It's not just money. It's not just mizanot. Chaim Kanievsky writes that even the stress a person has, the level of stress that he's going to have the whole year. If a person can measure, we don't have a way of measuring, but Hashem does have a way of measuring the amount of stress. Let's say I call it a 10 level stress, an 8 level stress he's going to have. All of the stresses of the year are already predetermined. Every single one of them. And here we are in our silly little Anochi mindset of me. We're thinking to ourselves, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I turned right instead of taking a left. I just wasted another 20 minutes on the ways, right? Or I can't believe that I chose this job. I should have chosen that job. If I would have chosen that job, I would have been making $100,000 more than I'm making now. And we have all of these thoughts, all of these regrets, all of these stresses, all of these things that we think we're deciding. I have to decide, oy vey, what am I going to do? Am I going to pursue this career? I'm going to pursue that career. And he's weeks on end debating himself, thinking that it matters. what he determines, because at the end of the day it doesn't, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu already predetermined what his panasah is going to be, what his stress is going to be. Sometimes there are people, they debate, should I have another child or I shouldn't have another child? Maybe I'll have another child, but I want another child, it's beautiful, it's a bracha, but there's so much financially, it's a big difficulty. There's so much stress involved in having a child. It means you have to raise them, you have to take care of them, and the first year is just constantly, and even afterwards, even bigger tzarot as time goes on. I don't want all that stress. They think in a very anochi mindset. That's not the mindset of the Torah. The stress is there anyway. You determine you want to have another child, you don't want to have another child. Hashem said the level of stress you're going to have this year is 1,000. So you can decide one thing. Are you going to have that with a child or without a child? But the level of stress is not going to change. It's just the variables of what's going to bring the stress is going to be different. Says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, if that's your two choices, I'm going to have stress or I'm going to have stress. But my choice is with the child or without a child. Why not with a child? That's bracha. It's much better, right? I might as well put it into good use. I'm already there. I have to put into use. It's like when you have tax credits. They give you, sometimes the government allots. It's called earmarked. It's earmarked for a certain thing. It's earmarked. Let's say they have a lot of security for security of schools and different things. You're getting the $50,000 from the government is giving you the $50,000. You say to yourself, but to make security and to put it and to call the company and to ask them to do it the way we want it, it's such a headache. I'd rather just not do it. Give $50,000. You might as well use it because you can't use it for anything else anyway. So at least put it into good use and put up the security. Of course, nobody would think otherwise. You're getting the $50,000, you might as well use it for something good. What, are you going to go ahead and throw it in the trash? Of course, so the same thing. If a person lives his life in that way, his life is stress-free. His life is worry-free. I have to do my due diligence. I'm responsible because HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want me to sit back and just relax. He wants me to put in work. He wants me to put in time. He wants me to make educated decisions. He wants me to be educated in school, to do my ishtadut. Yes, of course he wants me to do that. But why would I be stressed out? Why would I be worried? Why would I be nervous? Why would I be regretful? All of that is, you know what that is? It's called the anochi. It's because I think I'm calling the shots, I'm making the decisions, and therefore sometimes I'm happy and sometimes I'm upset at myself for making the wrong decisions. But when one realizes you're not in the driver's seat, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the driver's seat, and he already determined from the beginning what is going to be the panasah, what is going to be the stress, even the enjoyment of a person. The amount of enjoyment a person has in the year is also determined in the beginning of the year. Literally everything is determined, except for the mitzvot of a person, that he has the choice to take upon himself a mitzvah versus not, and then he'll be compensated, he'll get a tax credit in Shamayim for doing the mitzvot. Aside from that, it's all been predetermined. So what do you have to lose by doing the right thing? Why are you upset? Why are you worried? Only because of the anochi. As the Hasidic Rebbes, they say beautiful, a nice Hasidic word. If you look at the word re'eh, to see, there's te'amim. We know we have the tunes. The tunes, they come in signs. And the sign of re'eh is called ravia. It's always, the ravia is a dot that's on top of the word. A ravia is on top of the word. Everybody that knows te'amim knows ravia is on top of the word. You'll never find the ravia on the bottom of the word. It says re'eh, when you see that all the dots, all that happens, is coming milemala, is coming from above. So then the anochi, which follows, what's the tam of the anochi? Where are Baalei Kriya? Tevir, it's called. Yeah. Tevir. The tevir that's on the bottom, it breaks the anochi. Tevir means to break. Litbor means to break in the Aramit. The anochi is broken when you realize that the ravia of re'eh. When you see things from above, when you see it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all of a sudden the anochi is broken. It's not about me. It's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu determined. He went ahead and he gave me panasah. He took away the panasah. It was a determination. I had nothing to do with it. It was going to happen anyways. I might as well accept it with simcha, rabbah, because it's the best thing HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for me. Person lives a lifestyle like that, it changes the whole dynamic. Yes?
The person didn't think of prayed certain things on Rosh Hashanah, and then at the end of the year happens. Would a person be wise to let Rosh Hashanah so you could pray for it? Because the person will think whatever you pray for Rosh Hashanah, that's the effect that will happen.
You should pray. You should pray for things that are he perceives as bracha. You should pray for it. As the Gemara says that if a person prayed that his wheat field should grow, and the shaliach, the messenger that he sent, planted a barley field in its stead. He didn't know. He told the messenger to plant him wheat. And the messenger decided on his own, no, it makes more sense to plant barley. He planted him a field of barley. And he prayed on Rosh Hashanah, my wheat field should grow and be good and have bracha. So Gemara says that if the field gets a tsunami and drowned and destroyed, he could come to the shaliach with a complaint and say, he could come to Beit Din, and he can have an argument in Beit Din that is accepted and say, listen, it's your fault that the whole thing got washed up. He says, what do you mean? I caused tsunamis? How's it my fault? He says, no, you planted barley. And if it would have been wheat, it would have stopped the tsunami. Well, wheat stops tsunamis, have you heard of such a thing? Of course not. He says, yeah, but if wheat would have been planted, I prayed for my wheat to grow. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have accepted the tefillah, and the tefillah stops the tsunami. Now that you planted barley, my tefillah wasn't able to be answered because it wasn't on what existed. And therefore, the tsunami was able to affect it. In Shamayim, and even in Beit Din, the Gemara says, the argument is accepted. True, good point. Shows you that when you pray on Rosh Hashanah, how much of an impact it has. It's not talking about Baba Sali. It says the average Joe comes to Beit Din. It doesn't matter who it is. The Gemara doesn't say only if he keeps Torah mitzvot 100%. But if he keeps Torah mitzvot 99%, then it doesn't apply. This Gemara applies. It's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. That means it applies to every single Jew. Can make such an argument. I would have prayed on Rosh Hashanah for the right thing, it would have been matzliach. Wow, it's so powerful. Such an unbelievable concept that we have. There's another beautiful chidush. As we know, a person, we're coming close to Yamot HaGeshamim, the rainy days. And the rainy days, Eretz Yisrael is a little different than America. We start a little bit later. We start in December to say Barech Aleinu, which inside the Barech Aleinu says V'ten tanu matar livracha. We ask for rain. As it's true in Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, we start saying Mashiv Aruach Moed HaGeshem. But that's not asking for rain, that's declaring that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings the rain. But the asking happens a little bit later on. Either way, a man who says Barech Aleinu, and it's the summer months, it's not the winter months. He is already used to saying Barech Aleinu from December all the way to April. He's been saying Barech Aleinu, V'ten tanu matar livracha, and now it's already spring. And he accidentally, it slipped his mind, and he started saying, V'ten tanu matar livracha. And he finished the bracha. Sa'alacha. He has to go back. He has to go back. You don't fulfill your mitzvah. You have to go back. Finish the whole tefillah, he has to go back and pray again. If you finish the bracha, he has to go back and repeat the bracha. He has to go back. Why do you have to go back? Because asking for rain, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu hears the tefillah, brings rain, it's klala. It's a curse. To have rain in the summer months is a bad thing. There's a season for the rain when it's good. And then it's bad when it's not supposed to be raining. So then it ruins the crop. So you're asking for rain, which if it's answered, is going to ruin the crop. So Gemara says, okay, you did something bad. So it's a klala, so you have to go back for it. Question, the guy wasn't paying attention clearly, right? If he was paying attention, he wouldn't have said, V'ten tanu matar livracha in the summer months. So the guy was spaced out, and he did the wrong thing. What tefillah is going to be answered? In Shamayim, they're listening to him. The guy is thinking about the latest news and his latest sports game, and he says, V'ten tanu matar livracha. The words he says are, you have to go back, because what you said, if it were to be answered, is a klala, it's a curse, and it's bad, and therefore go back. And what's bad? Why would such a tefillah be answered? It shows you the power of just saying words. A man who's not even focused, not even paying attention, not even the greatest tzaddik, some average Joe, went ahead and said such a tefillah. Oh, you just did a klala, you just made a curse, you cursed the world, oh no, it's very serious. Go back and pray again. How far tefillah goes, how important it is, and how much words make an impact. And to be exact, and to be precise, and to ask for what a person thinks he needs. Now it's true, we don't always know what we need. But there's certain basic things, this is why the Chachamim guide us. There's certain basic things a person asks for. We ask for parnasah, we ask for, it's interesting, we don't ask for money. You ever notice in the tefillot we say, and also the promises, it never says money. It always says parnasa. The word parnasa means sustenance. To be able to sustain ourselves. Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're asking to sustain it. Whatever it's necessary. Obviously, 21st century has different standards than the first century. What they needed back then was a little bit of bread and a little bit of water, and Baruch Hashem, that was good enough for them. Today, you give a person bread and water for 3 days straight, he's going to go crazy. But he's not going to eat bread and water a whole time. He can't. People don't, it's a different level, but whatever the parnasah is for the generation, that's how a person. That's what we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for. And refuah, we ask Hashem for health. So we want to be as specific as possible. When Yaakov Avinu had to confront Esav, he said, Hatzileni na miyad achi miyad Esav. He made it very specific. He wanted it to be clear. Every tefillah has to be clear. What do you mean? If it's your brother, then I know it's Esav. The process of elimination. There's only two. Esav destroyed the womb of his mother. His mother was not able to have any more children. And she didn't have any children before Esav and Yaakov. So how many children does Rivka have? She has 2 children. So there was if he's my brother, he's Esav. If he's Esav, he's my brother. What else is there? So the answer is Yaakov wanted to be specific. There's an element of my brother. There's an element of Esav. I want to be as clear as possible in my tefillah. And every person is supposed to be as clear as possible in their tefillah. Let me tell you a beautiful chidush from the Yavetz. The Yavetz, Rabbi Yonatan Eifshitz, not the Yavetz, Rabbi Yonatan Eifshitz. He went ahead and he would learn secular topics like sciences and different things in the bathroom. And the reason he would do it L'Shem Shamayim, because he was so engrossed in Torah, it was a big concern. Most of us are not used to thinking this way, but the Gedolei Hador were so into Torah, they would go even to the bathroom and they would have a very big challenge to stop thinking Torah, because you're not allowed to think Divrei Torah in the bathroom. So how do you get your mind off of Torah when every single second of the day you're focused on Torah and you're not allowed to think? So they would try to occupy themselves in other types of wisdoms that aren't Torah-based, science-based, and different things. And that's what Rabbi Yonatan Eifshitz would do. They said one time he stopped. He said, cold turkey, he said, I'm not learning any other chokhmah in the bathroom. I'll space out. I'm not going to think anything, but I'm not going to learn chokhmah. Why? What was the story? What happened? He started reading a scientific research paper, and the scientist said as follows. So there's a discovery that he recently discovered to make a tree grow fast very quickly, and to start growing fruits in a much, much quicker way. And he looks and he's reading, he's interested, very interesting. Says, if you take milk and you put a piece of meat inside of it and cook it well for a few hours, all the fats of the meat go into the milk, and then you take that milk and strain the meats, the pieces of meat, only take the milk with all of the absorbed flavor in it, and you water the tree with that milk, the fruits are going to grow super fast. Rabbi Yonatan Eifshitz reads this, and he's in the bathroom, and he's immediately, in a split second, a chidush came to him. What was the chidush? It says in this week's parasha, Reshit bikurei admatecha, tavi bet Hashem elokecha. Reshit bikurei admatecha is talking about which mitzvah? It's in the pasuk, right? Bikurim, mitzvat bikurim. Bikurim means the first fruits that grow. You put a red string on it, and you take a shivata minim, the 7 species of Eretz Yisrael. You take it to Yerushalayim, and you bring it before the Mizbeach, before the Kohanim, and you bring it to Hashem. Reshit bikurei admatecha tavi bet Hashem elokecha. You bring it before Hashem. The next words, Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo. And also, don't mix meat and milk. Don't cook meat and milk together. Anybody reads this pasuk, what's connection? Bikurim to meat and milk. Rabbi Yonatan Eifshitz, once he read this scientific study that this man, is 17th century, this is the 18th century, right? That's when he was alive. Wrote that he discovered that when you cook meat and milk together and you put it by a tree, the fruits grow faster. Said, oh my gosh, I get it. A person wants to bring bikurim ASAP. He wants to be the first one to do the mitzvah. What's he going to do? He's going to say, I want my fruits to grow faster than everybody else. So the Torah already knew what this scientist only figured out 2,000 years after the Torah was written. What did the Torah say? There's a trick to make the fruits grow faster. If you cook meat and milk together and you basically water the tree with it, the fruits will grow faster. Says the Torah, even if you want to make the fruits of the bikurim grow faster so you could be the first one to bring it, lo tevashe gedi b'chalev imo. You're still not allowed to do it. For the sake of the mitzvah, you're also not allowed to do it. Unbelievable chidush that Rabbi Yonatan Eibschitz came up with. The problem was he came up with this chidush in the bathroom, and he realized, wait a second, I'm not allowed to think divrei Torah in the bathroom. From that moment on, he stopped cold turkey, stopped learning other sciences in the bathroom out of fear that even learning something else will end up getting to the point of Torah. Unbelievable. The extent of how much the Gedorei Yisrael lived Torah and cared about Torah, and every thought of theirs was associated with the Torah. Which brings me to an idea that I think is relevant to current events. You know, when October 7th happened, it's true we live in America. We don't live in Eretz Yisrael, and we don't live on the border with Gaza. Nevertheless, it's something that goes without saying that when 1,000 Jews were murdered, every single Jew all over the entire world felt the pain, the anguish, the avelut, the mourning of the loss of the entire nation. As the Gemara says, even the loss of one Jew is like the loss of the entire world itself. And it's our responsibility to be noseh be'or havero, to view it as if we are there, together with Imo anochi betzara. We are there with them. We're in the same challenge, we're in the same struggle, we're in the same difficulty. As today, as we are 2 years after, or almost 3 years after, the events of October 7th, there's a very similar feeling we have to have about resonating with our brothers in Eretz Yisrael on a different point. And that is the Bnei Yeshiva. At this point in time, how things are headed, it's not looking good. As a Bnei Yeshiva, which are in the tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people sitting and learning Torah in Eretz HaKodesh, full time, all day, all night, sitting and learning Torah, are under attack. They're under a spiritual attack, not a physical attack per se, a spiritual attack. What's the attack? You have to join together and be part of the army. Every single person must enlist into the army. Now, it sounds innocuous, but in truth, it's extremely revolutionary, both for the state of Israel and for the existential threat, the spiritual existential threat that historically was unprecedented in Am Yisrael. Unprecedented, that's not a light word. There was never a time where Bnei Yeshiva, by other Jews, were told that you have to stop sitting and learning Torah and you have to go to the army. Adirabah, every war that Am Yisrael ever had, there were always, you don't go to war, you have to stay here and sit and learn, and the other people that are not shakua b'Torah, everybody else gets enlisted to the army. But you would always have the two camps, the camp of Torah and the camp of the Ishtadlut. And by and large, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu would actually do was the reverse. Hashem always commanded, whether it was Moshe, whether it was Gidon, the armies are too big. You have to make the army smaller. Why? Because people are going to say that the army did this, and not I did this. So when it came to Moshe Rabbeinu gathered all of Am Yisrael to fight against Midian. Hashem said, why you get so many people? He says, because we're dealing with an enemy that's 10 times our size. He says, no, it's too much. Elif lamate, only 1,000. Bring 1,000 from each tribe so that each tribe, imagine, what's 1,000 in each tribe? The tribes had tens of thousands of people in them, men, fighting age, tens of thousands of men of fighting age. And Moshe Rabbeinu takes 1,000, which is not even 10% of the people of fighting age to go to war. Why? Because Hashem told them, listen, every shevet has to do their mitzvah. Each person here has a mitzvah to destroy Midian. But at the same time, I don't want the whole shevet. I want them to sit and learn. And a small subset of the shevet should come so that everybody could recognize this war wasn't won by swords. it was won by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Same thing happened in the times of Gideon. He brought an army, amassed an army, I believe, of about 10,000 people. Hashem said way too much. It ended up boiling down to about, I don't remember, 300, 3,000, much, much less people, significantly less than what Gideon had in mind. And even what Gideon had in mind was a very small army in comparison. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that I fight the battles. Nobody else fights battles. Not Bibi Netanyahu, not the Ramatkal, not the IDF. Hashem says, Hashem ish milchama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu fights. Hashem yilachem lachem ve'atem tacharishun. Hashem fights the wars, and you stay there and do your mitzvot and your maasim tovim. So we have a mitzvah, but that mitzvah has to be done in the right scope. So this is an existential attack. It's a threat to the Bnei Torah that is happening, which basically means that us, we live in Chutz La'aretz, we're sort of not in the politics of Israel, but how are we supposed to feel? We're supposed to feel, we're supposed to have that mentality of if our brothers that are sitting and learning Torah in Eretz HaKodesh are under attack, that means we are under attack, every single one of us, no less than an attack on the physical Am Yisrael, when our brothers in Eretz Yisrael are physically attacked by Hamas. That means every single Jew is under threat because we're one nation. The same thing, and Koshikin in a spiritual sense, if our brothers that are serving in the army of Hashem are under attack and are existentially being threatened to take away their spirituality, and it's a terrible mistake, people think, and Rav Yitzchak Yosef said this very clearly, if you think that person that's a religious Haredi going to the army is not going to affect him, you're living a fantasy. It's a complete, utter lie. It's a complete untruth that the army does not affect a person, and it is designed to affect and to take a person away from spirituality. Unfortunately, whether it is that army, this accommodation, that accommodation, at the end of the day, the entire construct of how the army is functioned and always was conceived was to assimilate and to create a melting pot of Israeli society, not of American society. So the one thing that I think our takeaway as we enter into the month of Elul, I think what's the important thing to realize, and this comes in the sort of understanding of liberalism. We live in a very liberal society. For the last 200 years, the world has become very liberalized, and it had many benefits to Am Yisrael. There's no question about it. The idea of anti-Semitism as a concept that is a bad thing has, equality, that Jews received equality and they weren't treated like scum, and that Am Yisrael has rights and we have privileges and we're able to own property and we're able to work in industries that historically speaking never Jews were allowed to work, and we're allowed to essentially function with prosperity, with wealth, with bracha. Those are big things that are chasadim. These are kindnesses that are unprecedented in Am Yisrael. But with that comes a challenge of, used to be that to learn Torah, a person had to be moser nefesh. He had to sacrifice a tremendous amount in order to sit and learn. And today a lot of that has been sort of given to us on a silver platter. For today, a person to sit and learn, it's like a free trip to Eretz HaKodesh. I get to go to learn in Israel. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's geschmack. They supply me with everything. I have this amazing dorm room, even though the mattresses are a little bit thin, but I have an amazing dorm room, and they give us great food, and they take us on tiyulim. It's a completely different experience. So where's the mesiut nefesh? And sometimes you have to stop and think about it for a second. Look how much people in Israel right now, there are people that are not able to leave the country. There are people that because they're sitting and learning Torah, they're being arrested and put into jails. That's actually happening. That's like literally happening. People just want to sit and learn Torah. No, you're supposed to be going to the army. You get arrested, you're going to jail. And they sit in jail. And they're not able to, basically they're treated like a fugitive. Like they're a criminal. It comes out, the way right now the laws are set up, it's to be sitting and learning Torah is a criminal act of not going and participating in the army. You say to yourself, if a person is willing to fight so much for Torah, look what we're willing to do. Every single one of us would be willing to do the same thing. Sit and learn all day, and if it means I have to go to jail because I'm not allowed to go to the army, then I'll sit in jail. If somebody's willing to be so moser nefesh, then the whole learning that he does on a daily basis has to come with that kind of a mentality. Why am I sitting and learning every day? I gave up so much to be here. Some people, you have to be away from family. That's not an easy thing. A person has to be away from his community. He has to give up so much for the sake of learning. If a person understands that he's giving up so much and he's willing to sacrifice so much for the sake of his learning is going to be on a completely different level. Like there was once a Baal Tshuva that was learning with somebody. He sat and learned together with him, and the person was wasting time. And the Baal Tshuva said, listen, I gave up a lifestyle of luxury, of enjoyment, to follow the truth, not so I should go ahead and waste time in the Beit Midrash talking about President Trump and all of his accomplishments. I came here because I meant business and I found the truth and I sacrificed a tremendous amount so that I could sit and learn Torah. When a person sacrifices for Torah, his Torah is on a different level. And we understand, what are we fighting for? If we're willing to go to jail, if we're willing to not be allowed to leave the country, if we're willing to be treated like a fugitive of the law for the sake of Torah, then how can we go and do less? Then how can we wake up late? How can we waste time? We're willing to fight for this. So we have to believe in it. We have to take it and go full on. The month of Elul can't be a month that just goes, whatever, let's cruise along. It's not a cruise control. This is the emet. This is something we're willing to sacrifice for and we're willing to live and to die for. So if so, then we have to rise up to such a level in our Avodat Hashem as well. And Bezat Hashem, we should be zocher to see much Yeshuot, Brachot, Ve'atzachot. Amen ve'amen.
Amen.
You got a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Rabbi, so what's the Torah's perspective in terms
Points. I think it's a good question.